You are standing at the edge of the water with a handful of sand. You close your fist around it, tighter, because you don't want to lose it. And the tighter you close your hand, the faster it disappears between your fingers. Maybe it wasn't sand for you. Maybe it was a grown child you kept trying to steer back onto the path you had planned for them. The career, the marriage, the life you could already picture so clearly in your head. Maybe it was the version of yourself people used to admire, and you've spent years trying to keep that image alive. One more good impression at a time. One more effort to make sure nobody notices how much has changed. Maybe it was your own body. A new ache every season, and you meet each one with another appointment, another supplement, another quiet campaign to drag it back to who you were at 40. We give this a respectable name. We call it being responsible. We call it staying on top of things. We call it love, sometimes, when it's really just grip dressed up in kinder clothing. But underneath the respectable name, there's exhaustion. A tiredness in the arms that has nothing to do with age. The tiredness of holding something that was never meant to be held that way. The way you'd hold a bird if you wanted it to stay, instead of the way you'd hold it if you wanted it to be well. You've probably felt this without ever naming it. The particular fatigue after a phone call where you tried, again, to steer someone else's choices. The low static of worry that never fully turns off, even on the good days. The sense that if you just stopped pushing for one moment, everything might slide backward. So here's the question worth sitting with before anything else, before any teaching, before any technique. What if letting go was never something you had to learn how to do, but something you simply had to stop pretending you weren't already living inside of? The traditional accounts of his life tell us that 25 centuries ago, a young man had almost everything a person could organize a life around. Siddhartha Gautama was born into a household that could build walls tall enough to keep the ugliness of the world out. Servants who made sure nothing unpleasant crossed his path. A father who arranged the entire architecture of his son's days so that suffering would simply not be on the schedule. Beautiful gardens, careful routines, every discomfort quietly removed before it could reach him. By every outward measure, his grip on life was complete. He had control most people spend a lifetime chasing and never quite catch. Wealth, status, a future already mapped out for him, generous and secure. And yet, in the traditional telling, outside those walls, he saw an old man, bent and slow, then a sick man, struggling for breath, then a body being carried toward its resting place, mourned by people who could do nothing to call it back. Ordinary sights, the kind you or I pass on any given week without a second thought, the kind that barely register anymore because we've seen them so many times. For him, they landed differently, because in that moment, something became impossible to unsee. No wall, no servant, no father's careful planning had ever actually been in control. Not of the graying of hair, not of the failing of a body, not of the quiet unraveling that time performs on everyone eventually, prince or otherwise. He didn't leave the palace to find a better system of control. He didn't set out looking for a stronger wall, a wiser servant, a more foolproof plan. He left to find out what was still there, once every attempt at control had finally run out of road. That's the part of the story that tends to get skipped over. He wasn't running from life. He was running toward the one question his sheltered life had never let him ask. There's a particular kind of busyness that has nothing to do with your to-do list. It's the busyness of a mind that is constantly negotiating with reality, constantly setting terms. I'll be at peace once my son calls more often. I'll relax once the test results come back clean. I'll finally feel settled once things go the way I've already decided, in my head, that they're supposed to go. Notice that this isn't planning. Planning is useful. Planning is choosing what to do next. This is something else entirely. It's a background hum of bargaining, running underneath almost every hour of the day, whether you're aware of it or not. It's there while you're making coffee. It's there while you're half listening to the news. It's there, quietly, even while you're trying to fall asleep. There is a Buddhist word that touches this: upadana, clinging, that reaching, that holding, that insistence that what is happening must become something else before you can rest. Now, here's what this is not, because the misunderstanding shows up almost instantly, and it's worth clearing out of the way before it settles in. This is not about becoming passive. It's not a case for shrugging when your grandson calls with bad news, or ignoring a symptom your doctor really should hear about. Letting go of clinging doesn't mean you stop caring what happens to the people you love. It doesn't mean you stop making appointments, stop checking in, stop showing up. What it means is something much more precise and much less dramatic than it sounds. You stop assuming that your bargaining is what's holding the world together. You stop confusing your grip with your love. Those two things have been sitting so close together for so long that most of us never noticed they were separate to begin with. You can want something without being trapped by wanting it. You can hope your son calls more often. You can work for your own health. You can want a marriage or a friendship to heal. The problem was never the wanting. The problem begins when a preference quietly becomes a demand. When "I wish this were different" turns into "this has to be different before I can be at peace." That is where wanting turns into clinging. So why does this grip form in the first place? Why is it so hard to simply set it down, even once you understand, intellectually, that you're holding something that was never yours to hold? Picture a river. Not a violent one. A wide, unhurried river, moving the way rivers have moved for longer than any of us have existed, carrying everything on its surface toward the sea, patiently, without needing to be told which way to go. And on that river, there's a log. Your log. This is your life, drifting. The river already has a direction. It doesn't need instructions. It doesn't need your input. It was moving perfectly well before you arrived at the bank, and it will keep moving long after you're gone. That's simply what rivers do. But you're standing on the shore with a long stick in your hands, and every time the log drifts a little too close to the bank, you've labeled trouble. Sickness, failure, disappointment, decline, the things you've spent a lifetime trying to avoid. You jab the stick out and shove it away, hard, before it can drift any closer. And every time it drifts toward the bank, you've labeled success. Youth, approval, certainty, comfort, the things you've spent a lifetime trying to hold on to. You reach out and try to hook it, drag it closer, hold it there, anchor it in place so it can't slip away again. Push away from this, pull toward that, hour after hour, day after day, year after year, standing at the water's edge with your arm never quite resting, never quite allowed to come down to your side. Feel that for a moment, not as an idea, but in the body. The particular ache of an arm that has been raised for years, gripping something, refusing to lower. That dull, constant tension in the shoulder that never fully softens, even when you're sitting still, even when you're supposedly relaxing. That's not just muscle fatigue. That's what it feels like to hold a stick you were never actually given. Here's what nobody warns you about the stick. It was never actually steering the log. The current was always doing that. What the stick was doing, this whole time, was creating turbulence. Small chaotic ripples around a log that would have drifted just fine on its own, in its own time, at its own pace. And your arm is tired. Not because the log is heavy. It was never yours to carry in the first place. Your arm is tired because you've been standing in one position for years, muscles locked, gripping a stick, refusing to believe the water already knew where it was going. We call this vigilance. We call it staying engaged. We call it not giving up on the people and things we love. We tell ourselves that if we ever put the stick down, everything would drift somewhere terrible, and it would be our fault for not holding on tightly enough. But watch closely, just for a moment, at the exact instant you push the stick out to shove the log away from the bank-marked trouble. What is that motion actually made of, underneath the urgency? It's fear, mostly. Fear dressed up as diligence. Fear wearing the costume of responsibility so convincingly that even you don't recognize it anymore. And underneath the fear, if you look even closer, there's a quiet belief, one that's been running so long it feels like fact rather than assumption, that reality signed a contract with you, a contract that says things are supposed to go a certain way. Your health, your children's choices, the shape of your remaining years. And if they don't, something has gone wrong, and it's your job to fix the wrong with your stick. Reality never signed that contract. It was never even shown to reality. You wrote it alone, in your own head, sometime long ago, and then spent years exhausted because the world kept failing to honor an agreement it never agreed to and never even knew existed. Letting go is not pushing the log toward the sea faster. Letting go is not a stronger current, a better route, a more determined effort. Letting go is putting the stick down. Here is where most people, hearing all of this, quietly brace themselves. Because the phrase letting go carries a reputation, and the reputation isn't flattering. People imagine that letting go means becoming cold, detached in the unkind sense. The sense where you stop showing up for your daughter's bad week, stop calling the doctor about the new pain in your knee, stop caring whether your grandchildren remember your name on their birthday. When people hear detachment, they often picture someone drifting through life half-present, unmoved by anything, indifferent to the people around them. That is not what is being pointed to here. Not even close. Here's the part people don't expect, the part that tends to surprise people the most. When you're not gripping the stick out of fear, your hands are actually free to do something useful. You can reach into the water and simply help the log along, gently, without the panic, without the exhausting insistence that it must go your way or the whole river has failed you. You can still call your daughter. You can still make the appointment. You can still show up, fully, for the people you love. Only now, without the white-knuckled grip that's been wearing you down for years. It helps to notice something most people never stop to ask. Has the gripping ever actually worked? Not once in a while, by coincidence, but reliably, as a method. Has worrying about your son's choices ever once changed his choices? Has replaying the same fear at 2 a.m. ever once prevented the thing you were afraid of? Usually not. Usually the gripping changes nothing about the log and everything about the state of your own arm. What it produces, consistently, is a tired person standing at the edge of a river that was always going to keep moving regardless. So the fear of becoming cold by letting go has it backwards. The exhaustion of constant gripping is what actually drains the warmth out of a person over time. The irritability, the short temper, the sense of being perpetually on edge. Set the stick down, and there's often more warmth available afterward, not less, simply because there's less static in the way of it. And this is the strange part. Seeing is letting go, not straining to let go. Not gripping your teeth and forcing your fingers open through sheer willpower, which usually just produces a different, quieter kind of grip. The grip of trying very hard not to grip, simply seeing, clearly, without flinching, without looking away, that the stick was never doing what you thought it was doing. The moment you truly see that, all the way through, your hand opens on its own. Nobody has to pry it open. You don't need a technique for it. That's the difference between understanding letting go as an idea you agree with and letting go actually happening to you on its own the moment the seeing is complete. So what does any of this look like on a Tuesday afternoon for someone with a mortgage, a family group chat, and a doctor's appointment next week? Think of one person right now who you find yourself trying to change. Maybe it's a son who won't call as often as you'd like. Maybe it's a spouse who handles stress differently than you think they should. Maybe it's a friend who keeps making choices you wouldn't make yourself. Notice the stick in your hand, that specific tightness. In the chest, in the jaw, sometimes just behind the eyes. That shows up the instant they don't do what you were hoping for. That small flare of frustration when the conversation doesn't go where you wanted it to go. That tightness is information. It's the exact physical location where clinging is happening, right now, in real time. Not as a concept, but as a sensation you can actually feel. You might try this, just once, today. The next time you feel that tightness rise, pause for 3 seconds before reaching for the stick. Not 3 seconds to plan a better argument or a more persuasive way to make your point. 3 seconds simply to notice. Oh, there it is, the old grip, trying to steer the current again, the same way it always has. That's the entire practice. Nothing more elaborate than that. You are not being asked to solve your relationship with your son in one sitting, or to suddenly become a different person by dinner. You are only being asked to notice the stick before your hand moves. Just notice. That's all. You don't have to solve anything in that moment. You only have to see it clearly enough not to add another layer of struggle on top of it. This isn't a teaching reserved for people who leave ordinary life behind. The early Buddhist texts also preserve the example of Siddha, a lay follower whose practice unfolded within ordinary household life. The point is not that he escaped ordinary responsibilities. It is that clarity did not require escaping them. That steadiness did not come from managing every outcome more tightly. It came from clarity practiced within ordinary life. You don't need a retreat for this. You don't need an hour of silence you probably don't have room for on a Tuesday. You need the 3 seconds. That's the whole entry point. It might happen while you're on the phone with your son and he says something that makes your stomach tighten. It might happen while you're waiting on a test result and your mind starts sprinting ahead to worst-case scenarios. It might happen at the dinner table, watching someone you love make a choice you wouldn't make. Wherever it happens, the practice is the same 3 seconds, over and over, day after day. Not a technique you master once, but a noticing you return to, again and again, for as long as it takes to become familiar. And some days you'll catch it. Some days you'll feel the tightness rise and you'll pause, and something in you will soften before your hand ever reaches for the stick. Other days you won't catch it at all. You'll grip just as hard as you always have, and only notice afterward, hours later, how tired your arm has become. Both are fine. Both are part of it. The practice was never about a perfect record. It was only ever about noticing one moment sooner than you did the last time. Let's return to where we began. The handful of sand tightening in your fist. The vanishing that speeds up the harder you squeeze, no matter how much you want it to work the other way. The answer was never a better technique for holding sand. It was never a stronger grip, a smarter strategy, a more disciplined form of control, a better system than the one you've already tried and exhausted yourself with. The sand was in your hand. It was real enough to feel, real enough to matter. What was never real was the promise that you could make it stay there forever. And it was that promise, not the sand itself, that you'd been gripping so hard for so long. And this, too, is worth saying plainly before we close. Everything you've just heard, the river, the stick, the sand, even the word upadana itself, none of it is the destination. These are only fingers pointing toward something beyond themselves. The moment any of these words start to feel like a doctrine to defend rather than a doorway to walk through, set them down as well. They did their work the instant you stopped needing them. So tonight, before sleep comes, here is something you might simply sit with. No obligation attached, no pressure to get it right. Could you let the world run itself for a few minutes? Without your supervision? Not forever. Not as a policy. Just for a few minutes, tonight, before you close your eyes. And when you finally do set the stick down, even briefly, even just once, may you feel how still the water becomes once nothing is stirring it. Be well and stay awake.